So every few years or so, I will share my experience of living and working and offering service in the Abbey forests, usually as an analogy, helping me with my Dharma practice and so forth. And this time around, I wanted to share my experience of living so enclosed within Mother Earth's embrace here in a different perspective. And I have been continually amazed as the years go on at her diversity and how she continues, with a lot of help from a lot of people, to become more and more beautiful and more amazing as the years go on. And as time goes on, as the community grows, I've become even more, it has been more confirmed and validated in my own mind that she has become a crucial support for keeping the community physically and mentally balanced, living in this environment. And that it is, and for everybody who comes here, even for a short time, that she is an extremely powerful support for our well-being. The orchards, the ponds, the groves, the streams, the meadows, that she supports our practice, especially for me, for bodhicitta. And so when I think about this spiritual relationship to Mother Earth in regards to Dharma practice and life here, it really makes me think about how much Mother Earth has supported the Sangha for a very, very long time, from the time that the Buddha first became awakened. And I wanted to, whether it's an analogy or a metaphor or a legend, it doesn't matter to me. I'm extremely inspired by the story of the Buddha's awakening and how Mother Earth affirmed and witnessed for him. So I just wanted to share the story in short, and then to sort of bring it 2,600 years forward to see how much she continues to hold a very crucial role in regards to the well-being of her inhabitants, her family on Earth here. So when the Buddha committed to becoming awakened after his years of asceticism and traveling and meditation, he committed to parking himself on a seat and not rising until he became awakened. So he found himself a Bodhi tree. All right, now once again, legend, I don't care. I think it's a wonderful, exciting, and of course he could have been a bodhisattva for countless great eons, and this was his final life. This was his final destination before awakening. So he committed to himself to sit under this tree. Now, during the course of that night, he had, through deeper realizations, all the parts coming together, all the obstacles that samsara had brought him since beginningless time in the way of him understanding how reality truly was, fell away. And then the awakened mind was present and was accessible, and that's where he was in that moment. At the same time, Mara, the tempter, or so it goes, I always see this character sort of as the antithesis of all the foibles, the vulgarities, the seductions of samsara, playing themselves out in this embodiment. And so this being was having a freak out because the Buddha was now a Buddha and had some problems with this issue. So he scoffed at the Buddha, he tried to distract him, he was mocking him like, who the heck do you think you are that you, common, ordinary being, can become a Buddha? Where do you get off thinking that? And so in the process, he made 3 attempts to get the Buddha I'm not sure what the chronology of the realizations that the Buddha had on that night and morning and where Mara was in the piece. Could have been internal pieces in Buddha's mind, distractions, the final subtle obscurations that could have been externalized. Doesn't matter. He was in there to try to figure out a way to distract the Buddha. So the first thing he did, he was going to sort of manifest all of the cruelty, the hatred, the vengeance, the warmongering of samsara in the form of these minions of armies that came at the Buddha with swords and knives and arrows shooting across the sky. And the Buddha turned them all into flowers. Okay, all right, we're going to try the lust and the desire route, and brought forth in front of the Buddha all these gorgeous daughters he manifested, cavorting and seducing and dancing all around the Buddha. Didn't bother the Buddha the least bit. Third one was to promise the Buddha unlimited power over earth. Because, see, Mara's got human beings figured out. He knows that power is one of our final frontiers, right? We can see it playing itself out incredibly in the world right now. Power is a huge hook for human beings. But the Buddha was unmoved. So finally, Mara said, well, this is pretty audacious for you to think that you can be enlightened. And by whose authority do you claim this awakened state? It's just you and me here. Who's here? I'm not going to say anything about your awakening to anybody. And what happened is the Buddha took his hand, as in the statue here, and he turned his palm down, and he touched the earth. And in that moment, the earth goddess trembled, and with a clear and roaring voice said, I shall witness the world one's awakening. I am here. And so that mudra, whether legend or metaphor, for 2,600 years, when you see a statue of Shakyamuni Buddha, more often than not, he is holding his alms bowl, which has the nectar of the Dharma. It also symbolizes humility, simplicity, and his total dependence upon the kindness of others to sustain his life. And his right hand is in the earth-touching mudra, celebrating this exchange that happened between him and the earth goddess when Mara was testing him in that final time. And not just the Buddha, but the Sangha in general during that time were mostly lived in the wilderness. India was quite a wild place back then. They were homeless. They depended upon perhaps some wild foraging and the kindness of their lay supporters. And that until Sravasti was found and built to kind of hold the Sangha in place, especially during the rains retreat, he was a wanderer through all of North India. He slept, he ate, he meditated under the stars, he meditated under the trees, they meditated on rock ledges. And that the early Sangha was at heart, they were nature lovers. They actualized the Dharma in their minds in the wilds of Mother Earth. And that she witnessed the Buddha's enlightenment and she took care of them in some form. So now, 2,600 years later, when I walk these forests and meadows at the Abbey and touch into the peace and the safety of this place, it's easy to touch into the importance of how Mother Nature in our lives is here to support us as we practice and to train our minds as the Buddha and the Sangha lived within her embrace 2,600 years ago. And that she is, we have to keep remembering how crucial of support she is for the well-being and the longevity of all living beings on earth. And when Venerable cast her vision out there, she was very clear that the Abbey would be somewhat away from the world, but not totally out of the world. Silent, spacious, healing, nurturing, quieting, expansive, to totally support what she was envisioning. And so wise and following the Buddha's example of life. And so the Abbey, she found this beautiful, beautiful place, and it fits totally in the context of how the Buddha set the Sangha in motion. And one of the things that has also become really clear to me is that with all the technology and the social media, the computer, the phone screens, the news, the entertainment, the stress that can arise in our lives, that our minds can get really, really narrow. They can get really, really tight. They can get really desensitized, disconnected to nature. Even though we are globally connected, apparently, we are quite disconnected to her. That there's a feedback loop that can go like that. Too much sitting, too much social media, too much mental work, not enough connection, not enough stepping back to refresh, to recharge, to replenish oneself. And that Mother Earth has a very different impact on our minds, unlike technology at this point. She helps us to open up the narrow view. She helps us to soften the hard edges. She helps us to touch into very subtle, ever-moving phenomena of which she is a major manifestation of. She's everywhere. She's above our heads. She's below our feet. She's in all the 10 directions. But I get concerned sometimes that we may be forgetting her, a little bit too caught up in our little worlds on a screen. Danger that she, and in many human beings' minds right now, that she is becoming a stranger. She's becoming a commodity. She's becoming an object of acquisition. She's becoming an extraction, a source of power instead of being precious and a support for well-being of all living beings. So the community here over the years, we've done our best to advocate for her. She needs advocates. The whole silicon smelter scenario that's been going on here for almost, I think, 4 or 5 years now, due to the support of a lot of people in this county and the community here, we've been able to keep that thing somewhat at bay, which would totally change and degrade the whole environment in this county in a very quick run. And a lot of her well-being, to understand that a lot of her well-being is closely tied to our own mental and physical well-being. And I can't state that enough. I've felt that myself in my own experience as a human being, and certainly as a spiritual practitioner, I've seen that she has become a huge nourishing and replenisher for me to be able to do the kind of practice that's required by living a monastic life here at the Abbey. She's right outside our back door. She invites us to pause and connect with her anytime, anything, anywhere, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour. And one of the things that you get to see is that whether it's for the folks who are going to go home, you're going to go back to your life, you're going to go back to school, your relationships, your work, or the community here who continues to share the Dharma, all of those things require a very concentrated, focused mind. There's a lot of energy. We've been talking about how big our appetites are this week because we've been thinking a lot about the Dharma, thinking a lot about about our emotions and how they play themselves out and how we think about things. That takes a lot of mental energy. And if we do that a lot without some sort of reprieve, it can really drain and tire the mind and tighten it up. So that's letting the body sort of take over for a while and get some exercise, and get some breath into it, get some blood flowing, and give the mind a rest. So Mother Nature becomes sort of a mental health resource, a physical health resource for all of us. So we are stewards of the land. And when I think about like 7.5 billion people on this planet, how many of them get a chance to work with the earth, to live close to her, to tend to her, to care for her? And because we get to do that, it's kind of a two-way street. As we care for her, she helps us care for ourselves as well. So with the stress and unrest in the world and the pressure that life can bring, it seems to be even more crucial now, irregardless of your age, irregardless of your livelihood, irregardless of your study, your practice, is that we continually have her somewhere in our pocket. We need her. We cannot, and she's not in your backyard, she's not out your back door. There's got to be a way for you to seek her out, to reconnect with her for our own sanity, for our own balance, for our own replenishment. And to seek solitude and solace in her, not so much about playing sports like bungee jumping and parasailing and rock climbing. That's a very different relationship to her than what I'm speaking about. I'm talking about that deep respect and joy and appreciation, just being in her presence. Just letting go of the day, just kind of walking away from stuff, just to let her help recharge you. And as spiritual beings, the world needs us to have strong and balanced bodies and minds. And she's a huge element of that. She enhances Dharma practice. She she helps keep me balanced and centered. So if you can't do it, she's not in your back door, okay, let's see, what can you do? Some flowers on your deck? Grow a tomato plant or two? Plant a tree in your city? Volunteer for any type of environmental advocacy that you can find. I mean, some of the places that you folks live, I'm sure that there's some really good cause. An organization that really impassions you to commit to communicating for them, writing, calling people who have power over her, to advocate for her in all positive ways. We just can't afford to be too busy. We just can't. We have to find a cause to support her and commit to her what we can. So His Holiness wrote a book recently. It's called Our Only Home. And of all the people who have a lot of responsibility to this world, who has committed to this world, he should know that she is our only home. And I strongly recommend getting that book and reading His Holiness's advice on how to care for ourselves, our practice, and to care for her. And that this is a very much an interdependent relationship, and that is very, very wise advice to follow. So I don't know for the folks who've been here for a few days, whether you have felt a little bit of a shift in your own body and mind, just being in this beautiful fresh air, and haven't seen the stars too much, but you've seen the clouds moving down into the valley. So to remember that she is very much a supporter of our spiritual journey. She's a supporter of our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And she gives it freely. There's no cost, there's no price. But it does mean for us to turn our attention to her consistently so that we can really do the work that we're impassioned to do in the world, to really do the spiritual seeking and the spiritual study that we have connected ourselves to, that she will really, really help and support that. So that's what I'm getting from being here in the forest now after these years. I love working with her, but she's really helping me to stay balanced and centered when the world seems to be kind of rumbling and tumbling around. So I encourage everybody to please find your niche with her, find out where she is closest to you, and reconnect and reintroduce yourself and see what happens.